First contact, worst impression. The United Earth defense ship Intrepid drifted through the debris field that had once been an alien vessel, its hull punctured in 17 places and life support failing on 2 decks. Admiral Helena Chen stood on the bridge, her uniform singed and bloodied, watching the holographic display as it tracked 5 more ships approaching at impossible speeds. "Combat status?" she asked, her voice steady despite the chaos of the last hour. Lieutenant Commander Jackson consulted his terminal. Point defense at 32%. Railguns operational. 1 missile bay functional. Reactor at 73% and holding. Chen nodded, eyes never leaving the display. "And our unwelcome visitors. Still hailing us, Admiral. Different frequency now. Translation software is struggling." First contact had not gone according to the thousands of simulations Earth had run. The Intrepid, humanity's most advanced exploration vessel, had emerged from its experimental jump drive to find itself in the middle of what appeared to be a blockade. When an alien vessel had fired what their sensors indicated was a scanning beam, the Intrepid's automated defense systems, designed to counter Earth's own emerging directed energy weapons, had interpreted it as an attack and responded with a barrage of kinetic penetrators. The alien ship hadn't even raised shields. Now Chen faced the prospect of becoming the officer who started humanity's first interstellar war. "Something's happening," Jackson reported. "The approaching vessels are decelerating. New transmission coming through." "It's clearer." The voice crackled over the speakers, the translation software struggling to keep pace with the alien syntax. "Human vessel. We, peace, misunderstanding. Request, cease, aggressive stance." Chen made her decision. "Stand down weapons. Open a channel." What followed was the most crucial conversation in human history. The aliens identified themselves as representatives of the Galactic Conclave, a coalition of spacefaring species that governed most of the explored galaxy. The vessel the Intrepid had destroyed had been a customs inspection ship, not a warship. Its scan had merely been a standard procedure for unidentified vessels entering Conclave space. "We did not know this area was claimed territory," Chen explained, diplomatic training kicking in despite the circumstances. "Earth has only achieved interstellar capability recently. This was to be our first venture beyond our solar system." There was a long pause before the alien responded. "Your venture has destroyed a Conclave vessel and killed 23 personnel. This is unprecedented." "As is our situation," Chen replied. "We deeply regret the loss of life, but our actions were defensive. We interpreted your scan as a prelude to attack." Another pause. "Your defensive capabilities are concerning for a species at your development stage. Our records show no evidence of intelligent life in your system. Perhaps your records need updating," Chen said, a hint of steel entering her voice. "We've been broadcasting into space for over 2 centuries." The conversation continued for hours, with the Conclave representatives growing increasingly disturbed by humanity's history and capabilities. Earth had achieved in decades what most species took centuries to develop. Humans had weaponized technologies that the Conclave used exclusively for peaceful purposes. And most disturbing of all, humans had accomplished this while fighting among themselves. 3 days later, the Intrepid limped into a massive space station that served as the nearest Conclave diplomatic outpost. Admiral Chen had spent the journey preparing for what would almost certainly be a tribunal. Earth's first interstellar mission had become a diplomatic catastrophe. The docking bay was filled with representatives from at least a dozen alien species, some humanoid, others defying easy classification. At their center stood a tall, slender being with iridescent skin that shifted colors like oil on water. "I am High Counselor Thexel," the being said, its translator now perfectly synced to human speech patterns. "Welcome to Outpost Serenity, Admiral Chen. Please follow me." The human delegation was led through corridors of breathtaking scale and beauty, the architecture clearly designed to accommodate species of vastly different sizes and environmental needs. Chen noted defensive choke points disguised as aesthetic features, environmental control systems that could quickly become lethal, and the subtle presence of armed guards. The conclave might preach peace, but they prepared for war. The council chamber was a hemisphere with tiered seating, occupied by representatives of what Chen guessed were at least 50 different species. The human delegation was directed to stand in the center. The incident involving the Earth vessel Intrepid and the conclave inspection ship Gentle Inquiry has been reviewed. Thexel announced. The destruction of the Gentle Inquiry and the death of its crew is the most serious diplomatic incident in the last 3 standard cycles. Chen steeled herself. This was it. However, Thexel continued, our investigation has revealed mitigating factors. The humans could not have known our protocols. Their defensive response, while extreme, was consistent with their understanding of the situation. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Furthermore, another counselor spoke, this one a massive being that seemed composed of crystalline structures. Analysis of the human vessel reveals technological innovation that is troubling. Their capabilities far exceed what our developmental models predict for their civilization's age. The humans are dangerous, came a third voice, belonging to a being that seemed to be composed of flowing liquid metal. Their history is filled with conflict. They weaponize everything they touch. And yet, Thexel countered, they have survived. Despite wars, environmental disasters, and resource limitations that would have ended many of our own species, they have persisted and advanced. This adaptability may prove valuable. The debate raged for hours, with the human delegation standing silently as their species' fate was decided. Chen observed the political dynamics carefully. The conclave was not the unified entity it first appeared to be. Factions existed, with different agendas and approaches. Finally, Thexel raised a 6-fingered hand for silence. The conclave has reached a decision. Humanity will not be held accountable for this tragic incident, provided Earth agrees to formal diplomatic relations and adherence to conclave protocols moving forward. Chen exhaled slowly. On behalf of Earth, I accept these terms and extend our deepest condolences for the lives lost. We look forward to peaceful relations. There is more, Thexel said. The conclave hereby extends an invitation for Earth to join as a probationary member. This is unprecedented for a species with your limited interstellar presence, but these are unprecedented times. The chamber erupted in noise, some clearly objecting to this proposal. Why? Chen asked when the commotion subsided. Why offer membership to a species that just destroyed one of your vessels? Thexel's skin shifted to a deep blue. Because, Admiral Chen, there are threats in this galaxy that the conclave has struggled to contain. Your people demonstrate qualities that may prove essential in the coming cycles. What threats? That information will be provided if Earth accepts membership, Thexel replied. Be warned, however. Many within the conclave view humans with suspicion. Your probationary period will be closely monitored, and any further incidents could result in severe consequences. Chen considered the implications. Earth would gain access to advanced technologies, new resources, and protection under conclave law. But they would also be subject to restrictions and oversight from civilizations thousands of years more advanced. I will convey your invitation to Earth's governments, Chen said. But I should warn you, humans don't respond well to threats, veiled or otherwise. Nor do they apparently respond well to standard scanning procedures. The liquid metal being remarked acidly. An unfortunate misunderstanding, Chen replied, maintaining her composure. One that cost 23 lives I cannot restore. But if the conclave truly wants humanity as members, you should understand this. We learn from our mistakes. Quickly. Thexel studied her for a long moment. That, Admiral Chen, is precisely what concerns us. 6 weeks later, after frantic debates among Earth's nations, humanity officially accepted probationary membership in the Galactic Conclave. The decision was not unanimous, but the majority recognized the tremendous opportunities and the existential risk of declining. As Chen prepared to return to Conclave space as Earth's newly appointed ambassador, she received a private communication from Thexel. Ambassador Chen, I feel I must be candid with you. There are those within the Conclave who advocated for your species' containment rather than inclusion. They were overruled not out of benevolence, but necessity. The threats I mentioned are real and growing. The Conclave needs humanity's distinctive approach to problem solving. You mean our capacity for violence? Chen replied bluntly. I mean your refusal to accept defeat, Thexel corrected. Most species that join the Conclave have evolved beyond their aggressive instincts. Humans appear to have channeled yours into remarkable innovation and resilience. And if these threats require more than innovation and resilience, their distrust. The timing is suspicious, declared the Vindari representative. Humans identify a vulnerability in our defenses, and suddenly the Void Heralds exploit similar weaknesses. Perhaps Earth has made contact with these terrorists. Chen maintained her composure. If humans were allied with the Void Heralds, why would Dr. Rivera publicly identify the vulnerability? Why would Commander Sokolov and her team risk their lives to defend convergence? To gain our trust, the Vindari countered. To accelerate your integration into our defense systems, which you are now doing anyway, Chen pointed out. If that was our plan, it worked remarkably well. High Counselor Thexel intervened before the exchange could escalate further. The evidence does not support collusion between Earth and the Void Heralds. Moreover, the actions of the human personnel aboard Convergence saved countless lives and preserved invaluable research. The debate continued for days, but the reality of the situation prevailed. The Conclave needed human adaptability and unconventional thinking to address the emerging Void Herald threat. Whether they trusted humans was irrelevant. They needed them. 1 month after the attack on Convergence, Dr. Rivera found himself aboard the Conclave defense platform Stalwart Guardian, leading a team implementing comprehensive security upgrades. The platform, positioned near a critical hyperspace junction, protected trade routes used by hundreds of species. Your modifications are complete, Doctor, reported his assistant, a young human engineer named Jin Park. The defense grid now incorporates the unpredictability algorithms you designed. Rivera nodded, studying the simulation results. Good. But I'm more concerned about what happens when the Void Heralds adapt to these changes, which they will. You think another attack is coming? I know it is, Rivera replied grimly. The question is whether we've done enough to prepare for it. As if in answer to his question, the platform's proximity alarms activated. The automated announcement was unnervingly calm. Multiple unidentified vessels detected, all personnel to battle stations. Rivera moved to the observation deck, where he could see the approaching threat. The Void Herald ships were larger this time, their biological components pulsing with eerie luminescence against the blackness of space. They've evolved, he whispered, a chill running down his spine. Already. The Void Heralds had indeed evolved, but so had the Conclave defenses, thanks to human intervention. The battle that followed would reshape the Conclave's understanding of warfare and cement humanity's place among the stars. Not as peaceful newcomers to a stable galactic community, but as warriors arriving just when their skills were desperately needed. The breaking storm. The Void Herald assault on Stalwart Guardian marked the beginning of what would later be called the Breaking Storm, a coordinated offensive against Conclave space that shattered 12,000 years of relative peace. Within days, attacks were reported across 17 sectors, each targeting critical infrastructure with precision that indicated extensive planning. Commander Ekaterina Sokolov stood in the war room of the Conclave command vessel Eternal Vigilance, surrounded by the holographic displays of battlefield reports. The room was filled with the Conclave's most senior military leaders, yet all eyes were on the human officer as she dismantled their defensive strategy. Your doctrine is based on concentration of force, Sokolov explained, manipulating the tactical display with practiced ease. You position your strongest assets to protect key systems and accept losses in peripheral areas. Against conventional enemies, this works. Against the Void Heralds, it's creating predictable weak points they're systematically exploiting. General Vex's crystalline form vibrated with barely contained frustration. And what would you suggest, Commander? Spreading our forces evenly would leave us too thin everywhere. Neither, Sokolov replied. We need mobility and unpredictability. Rapid response forces positioned at strategic junction points, ready to deploy wherever attacks manifest. Fast strikes, then reposition before the enemy can adapt. That contradicts 10 millennia of proven conclave military doctrine, objected Admiral Krell, a massive amphibian whose species had once been the conclave's premier strategists. Proven against conventional enemies, Sokolov countered. The Void Heralds are anything but conventional. They're adapting to your patterns faster than you're adapting to theirs. The debate might have continued indefinitely had the meeting not been interrupted by urgent news. The Vindari colony of New Horizon had fallen after a mere 6 hours of fighting. The Void Heralds had somehow bypassed the colony's orbital defenses entirely, landing ground forces directly in the capital city. The strategy worked, but only temporarily. The Void Heralds adapted quickly, their vessels demonstrating an unsettling coordination that suggested some form of hive mind. As they regrouped for another assault, Sokolov ordered all available personnel to the evacuation shuttles. We're abandoning the station, Administrator Korax asked incredulously. No, Sokolov replied. We're evacuating non-essential personnel. Then we're going to turn this station into a weapon. The plan was audacious and horrified the conclave officials. Convergence contained irreplaceable research and technology worth more than some planetary economies. But Sokolov, with Rivera's help, had calculated that the station's power core could be modified to emit a radiation pulse that would disrupt the Void Herald's unusual technology. The pulse won't permanently disable them, Rivera explained to the emergency council that had formed. But it should buy enough time for the Conclave response fleet to arrive. And destroyed billions in research facilities, a Vindari counselor objected. Better than letting it fall into enemy hands, Sokolov countered. And better than losing the station and everyone aboard. The debate ended when a Void Herald vessel breached the outer hull of the research wing. Sokolov's plan was approved, and the remaining crew, mostly humans who had volunteered to stay, began the dangerous work of modifying the power core. Rivera found himself working alongside Commander Sokolov as they rerouted critical systems. You don't seem surprised by any of this, he observed as they worked. The attack, the vulnerability I found. It's like you were expecting something. Sokolov's hands never stopped moving as she replied. Not expecting, Doctor. Preparing. There's a difference. The Conclave believes the Void Heralds are a minor threat. The Conclave has grown complacent, she said bluntly. Your research proved it. Their defenses haven't faced a truly adaptive opponent in millennia. A nearby explosion rocked the corridor. Unlike humans, Rivera realized aloud. Sokolov nodded grimly. Our entire history is adapting to threats, including ourselves. Earth's military doctrines evolved through thousands of years of conflict. The conclaves have stagnated through thousands of years of relative peace. The modified pulse worked exactly as Rivera had calculated, temporarily crippling the Void Herald vessels. The conclave response fleet arrived hours later to find the research station severely damaged, but intact, with the human crew having repelled 3 separate boarding attempts through improvised defenses, and in several cases, hand-to-hand combat that shocked the conclave observers. In the aftermath, Rivera's research gained urgent attention from the highest levels of the conclave. What had begun as a theoretical analysis of defense systems expanded into a comprehensive review of conclave security protocols. To his surprise, he was assigned a team of the conclave's most brilliant strategic minds, and given security clearance far beyond what any probationary species member should have received. The reason became clear during a private briefing with High Counselor Thexel and a small group of senior conclave officials. The Void Herald attack on Convergence wasn't an isolated incident. Similar attacks had occurred simultaneously across 3 sectors, each exploiting different weaknesses in Conclave systems. The Void Heralds were previously considered a fringe group, Thexel explained, skin shifting to an anxious purple, dangerous, but limited in resources and influence. Recent intelligence suggests they have acquired new technology and expanded their numbers significantly. They're preparing for something larger, added General Vex, the crystalline being who commanded the Conclave's unified defense forces. The attacks appear to be tests, probing our responses, analyzing our capabilities. And our vulnerabilities, Rivera said, like the one I identified. Precisely, Thexel confirmed. Your discovery, Dr. Rivera, might have come just in time. The question is whether the Conclave can adapt quickly enough to address these weaknesses. Humans are good at adapting, Rivera replied. It's practically our species-defining trait. Indeed, Thexel said, skin shifting to a thoughtful blue. Which is why we've made an unprecedented decision. Earth's probationary status remains, but we're accelerating the integration of human military and scientific personnel into our defense infrastructure. The implications were enormous. Humans, barely accepted into galactic society, were being fast-tracked into positions of significant responsibility and access. The political backlash from conservative conclave members was immediate and fierce. Ambassador Chen faced the brunt of this backlash during an emergency session of the Conclave General Assembly. Species representatives who had previously treated humans with cautious diplomacy now openly expressed, "Impossible," Admiral Krell declared. "Our detection grid would have." "They're using wormhole technology," Sokolov interrupted, studying the incoming data. "Micro-jumps that bypass traditional defensive screens." Earth's theoretical physicists proposed similar technology decades ago, but we lacked the energy sources to make it viable. The implications were terrifying. If the Void Heralds could open localized wormholes within planetary defense perimeters, no world was truly secure. "We need to adapt our strategy immediately," Sokolov insisted. "Every moment we delay costs lives." High Counselor Thexel, who had been observing silently, finally spoke. "General Vex, implement Commander Sokolov's recommendations for the 7th Fleet. Admiral Krell, maintain conventional deployment with the 3rd and 5th. We will compare the outcomes." The decision was controversial but proved prescient. Over the next 2 weeks, the 7th Fleet under Sokolov's tactical guidance successfully defended 6 systems from Herald attacks, while the conventionally deployed fleets suffered devastating losses. The evidence was irrefutable. Human military doctrine was more effective against this adaptive enemy. In an unprecedented move, the Conclave's Unified Defense Command was restructured, with Sokolov promoted to Admiral and given operational control of a third of the Conclave's military assets. The political backlash was immediate and severe. "You've placed the security of countless worlds in the hands of a species that only achieved interstellar travel months ago," the Vindari representative thundered during an emergency council session. "A species with a history of constant warfare and self-destruction." "A species," Thexel countered, "that is currently saving conclave worlds while we debate politics." The debate became moot when the next phase of the Void Herald offensive began. Rather than continuing to target outlying colonies and infrastructure, they struck directly at the heart of conclave space, the ancient capital world of Illuminaria, seat of the Galactic Conclave for 9,000 years. The attack came without warning, a massive Herald armada emerging from what appeared to be artificially generated spatial rifts less than a light minute from the planet. Illuminaria's defenses, while formidable, had never been designed to repel an attack of this magnitude. The planet's orbital installations began falling within hours. Admiral Sokolov, commanding the nearest response force, arrived to find the situation dire. The Conclave home fleet was in disarray, their formations shattered by the Herald's unconventional tactics. The command structure had collapsed when the primary defense platform was destroyed in the opening salvo. "This is Admiral Sokolov to all Conclave vessels," she broadcast on the emergency channel. Regroup and form defensive clusters as per Battle Plan Epsilon. Protect evacuation corridors from the surface at all costs. By whose authority do you command the home fleet? Came the response from a Vindari capital ship. By the authority of survival, Sokolov snapped back. Follow my orders or watch Illuminaria fall. Your choice. It was no choice at all. The remaining conclave vessels fell under Sokolov's command, reorganizing into the mobile defense clusters she had pioneered. What followed was 18 hours of the most intense space combat the conclave had witnessed in its long history. Human tactics emphasized flexibility and adaptation over rigid formation. Sokolov constantly shifted her forces, creating deliberate weaknesses to draw herald vessels into traps, then striking from unexpected vectors. The approach was anathema to conclave military doctrine, but devastatingly effective against the herald's hive-mind coordination. Even so, the battle exacted a terrible toll. Of the 300 conclave vessels that began the defense of Illuminaria, less than 80 remained operational when reinforcements finally arrived. The planet itself had suffered significant damage from orbital bombardment, with casualties in the millions, but it had held. In the aftermath, as the wounded conclave government evacuated to the secondary capital of New Luminar, Admiral Sokolov found herself summoned to a private audience with the High Council, the 12 beings who represented the founding species of the conclave. The meeting took place aboard the council vessel, Enlightened Discourse, in a chamber designed to accommodate the diverse physiologies of its occupants. Sokolov stood at the center, acutely aware that no human had ever been granted such an audience. Admiral Sokolov, High Counselor Fexel began, your actions at Illuminaria saved our seat of government and millions of lives. The conclave owes you a debt that cannot easily be repaid. I was simply doing my duty, Sokolov replied, uncomfortable with the formality. Fexel's skin darkened to near black. Then the conclave will face a moral dilemma, one that may determine the future of galactic civilization. Welcome to the stars, Ambassador Chen. I suspect the galaxy will never be the same. As the transmission ended, Chen gazed out at the stars visible through her office viewport. Humanity had stepped beyond their cradle and into a complex interstellar community that both feared and needed them. The irony wasn't lost on her. Earth's first interstellar mission had been a catastrophic diplomatic incident, yet had secured them a seat among the stars. The real challenge was just beginning. The adaptive species. 6 months after Earth's admission to the Galactic Conclave, humans had spread throughout conclave space with a speed that alarmed the older member species. What had begun as a careful diplomatic integration quickly evolved into a cultural and technological exchange that defied all predictions. Dr. Marcus Rivera stood in his laboratory aboard the Joint Research Station Convergence, staring at simulation results that made no sense, or rather, made too much sense. Run it again, he instructed the AI assistant the conclave had assigned him. The holographic display flickered, then repeated the simulation of conclave defensive systems responding to a theoretical attack pattern. Same result, Rivera muttered. The defense grid has a systemic vulnerability that nobody's addressed. His research partner, a Telleran named Shrix, whose species resembled feathered reptiles, clicked his beak in concern. This cannot be correct. The conclave defense protocols have been refined over 12,000 years. That's the problem, Rivera replied, manipulating the hologram to zoom in on a particular section. They've been refined against known threats and anticipated variations, but they've never been tested against genuinely novel attack strategies. The vulnerability Rivera had discovered was deceptively simple. Conclave defense systems were designed to detect energy signatures, calculate probable trajectories, and deploy countermeasures accordingly. But they operated on assumptions about the behavior of attacking forces, assumptions based on the strategic doctrines of known spacefaring civilizations. The system assumes rational actors with preservation instincts, Rivera explained to his increasingly distressed colleague. But what if an attacker doesn't value self-preservation in the conventional sense? You're describing suicide tactics, Shrix said, his feathers flattening in alarm. No advanced civilization employs such barbaric strategies. Rivera winced slightly. Earth history suggests otherwise. But I'm not even talking about suicide attacks specifically, just approaches that accept higher risk than your models anticipate. Before Shrix could respond, the station's alert system activated. A voice echoed through the laboratory. All personnel to emergency stations. Unknown vessels have breached the outer defense perimeter. This is not a drill. Rivera and Shrix exchanged alarmed glances. Convergence was positioned in a secure sector, hundreds of light years from any contested borders. That's impossible, Shrix whispered. Nothing could penetrate our detection grid without warning. Rivera's stomach nodded as he pulled up the external sensor feeds. Unless they exploited exactly the vulnerability I just found. The situation deteriorated rapidly. The attackers, identified as the Void Heralds, a quasi-religious group long considered a minor threat by the Conclave, had somehow bypassed the sector's early warning systems. Their vessels, twisted amalgamations of biological and mechanical components, swarmed around the research station. Commander Ekaterina Sokolov, the highest-ranking human military officer aboard Convergence, took control of the station's defenses when the Telleran security chief froze in panic. Her first action caught everyone by surprise. She shut down the automated defense grid entirely. "What are you doing?" demanded Administrator Korax, the station's Vindari overseer. "You've disabled our only protection." "Your automated systems are predictable," Sokolov replied calmly, her fingers dancing across the manual control interface. "And these attackers have clearly studied them. We need unpredictability now." What followed was a demonstration of human combat doctrine that left the station's alien personnel stunned. Rather than deploying defensive measures in the optimal mathematical patterns the Conclave had perfected, Sokolov created deliberate gaps in their defenses, then ambushed the attackers when they moved to exploit these apparent weaknesses. Rivera watched the tactical display in fascination. She's using the same principle I identified in the simulations, but in reverse, making our own behavior unpredictable enough to confuse their targeting systems. "Perhaps," said another counselor, a being composed of what appeared to be living crystal, "but your methods have raised profound questions about the Conclave's future. For millennia, we have prided ourselves on governance through consensus and peace maintained through overwhelming technological superiority. Neither approach is working against the Void Heralds," Sokolov pointed out. "Precisely," Thexel agreed, "which is why we have reached a difficult decision. The Conclave hereby grants Earth full member status, effective immediately, with all associated rights and responsibilities." Sokolov blinked in surprise. The probationary period for new species typically lasted decades, sometimes centuries. "That's unexpected. These are unprecedented times," the crystalline counselor replied. "But there is more. The Council has unanimously voted to create a new position, Supreme Commander of Conclave Forces, and to offer you this role." The implications were staggering. Such authority had never been centralized in the Conclave's history, always distributed among representatives of the founding species. "Why me?" Sokolov asked, genuinely puzzled. "There are more senior human officers, including Admiral Chen. Because you, Commander Sokolov, have demonstrated not only tactical brilliance, but the ability to integrate Conclave and human approaches," Thexel explained, "and because, frankly, you have earned the respect of our forces in battle. They will follow you." Sokolov considered the offer carefully. Supreme Command would give her the authority to implement the reforms needed to counter the Void Herald threat, but it would also make her the focus of political resistance from species uncomfortable with human influence. "I accept," she said finally, "on one condition. I need complete operational autonomy. The Conclave Council can set strategic objectives, but tactical decisions and resource allocation must be mine alone." The Council chambers fell silent. What she asked violated thousands of years of carefully balanced power sharing. The alternative, Sokolov added quietly, is watching more worlds fall while decisions are debated in committee. After hours of private deliberation, the council agreed to her terms. Admiral Ekaterina Sokolov, barely 6 months after humanity's first contact with the Conclave, became the most powerful military commander in galactic history. The reorganization of Conclave forces began immediately. Traditional fleet structures were dissolved and reformed into what Sokolov termed adaptive response groups. Mixed units combining vessels from different species, each bringing unique capabilities to the battle group. Human officers were integrated at all levels of command, their experience with adaptive warfare proving invaluable. Dr. Marcus Rivera found himself promoted to director of a new division, Advanced Countermeasures, tasked with developing technologies to neutralize the Void Herald's wormhole capabilities. His team included the brightest minds from 23 species, many of whom had initially resisted working under human leadership. The Herald's wormhole technology violates several principles of transdimensional physics as we understand them, noted Zexel, a Tellarine physicist. It should be impossible to create stable micro-rifts with such precision. Maybe their understanding of physics is better than ours, Rivera suggested, studying the sensor readings from Illuminaria. Or maybe they're using principles we haven't discovered yet. Or, interjected Jin Park, the young engineer who had distinguished herself during the battle for Stalwart Guardian, they're not creating stable wormholes at all. All eyes turned to Park, who projected her analysis onto the main display. These aren't traditional wormholes. They're more like forced quantum entanglement on a macroscopic scale. They're connecting 2 points in spacetime through quantum manipulation rather than actually puncturing the fabric of space. That's theoretically possible, Zexel admitted, but would require energy levels beyond anything we can generate. Unless, Rivera said slowly, the implications dawning on him, they're not generating the energy. They're harvesting it. The team's investigation led to a disturbing discovery. The Void Heralds weren't just attacking Conclave worlds, they were feeding on them. Their technology allowed them to extract energy directly from the quantum substrate of reality itself, a process that left regions of space permanently damaged. They're not just conquering, Rivera reported to Admiral Sokolov. They're consuming. Each world they take increases their power exponentially. Sokolov's expression darkened. Then we're not just fighting for territory. We're fighting for the existence of spacetime, as we know it. The full scope of the threat now clear, Sokolov implemented a strategy that would have been unthinkable months earlier. A coordinated offensive to reclaim fallen worlds and push the Void Heralds back to their point of origin. Defensive warfare won't work against an enemy that grows stronger with each victory, she explained to the combined Conclave leadership. We need to take the fight to them, cut off their resource acquisition, and force them to expend energy faster than they can harvest it. The offensive began 3 weeks later, with simultaneous attacks on Herald-occupied systems across the galactic rim. Human tactics, rapid strikes, unpredictable movements, and coordinated but independent battle groups proved devastatingly effective. For the first time since the conflict began, the Void Heralds found themselves reacting to Conclave movements rather than dictating the pace of battle. But the cost was high. The Heralds fought with increasing desperation as they were pushed back, unleashing weapons that violated the fundamental laws of physics as understood by Conclave science. Entire